That is true. All right. Yeah, Honey Watch Day. This is Toksa Hour. I am Maggie Ross, and I'm live from Porcupine, South Dakota, along the Porcupine Creek where the porcupines roam. And we are blessed again today because we are joined live with by Chaz Jewett from Eagle Butte, South Dakota. She lives along what river?
I live along Jewett Creek, but the Morrow River.
Turtle Creek.
Jewett Creek, actually.
Jewett, really?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome. Got a
yeah,
creek named after you.
yeah, we've been there since 1823, our family. So, um, and it was my non-Indian French Canadian trader trapper grandpa who came in and named. Well, I don't know if he named it or I don't know. Someone just ended up naming the creek after him. So yeah, that's where I live. And Eagle Butte here too. We got a lot of rain yesterday. Did you guys get a bunch?
Yeah, I was under the tornado watch thing and sat outside and watched some clouds build up and just kind of enjoyed it. It was nice. And then the rain came. So we came
Yeah,
inside.
that rain is necessary. But we had
No
the same
tornado,
here.
though. I don't know if anything touched down anywhere. I watched storm chasers up in Buffalo, South Dakota, and they had a pretty good um cloud looking like it was gonna do something, but then I got bored with it and I turned off TikTok.
Yeah, I saw that too. I thought, oh no, that's coming our way. But then I went to sleep. So nothing really happened. Thank God. But hey, I wanted to tell everyone I got a chance to,
Did you
because the radio station went to Little Bighorn, and so I was up there at that event, and it was nice,
you go?
Yeah, I did. I went just for the morning for the speeches for the radio station, and but I left, and there was still all kinds of camping and 2 days of activities. And it was an interesting thing. I think the Park Service could have paid for it all. Our tribe shouldn't have paid nothing. But because the Park Service controlled it, they like basically, told us what to do, where to stand, what to do, anything. And so there were a lot of non-Indians dressed up like Custer, and one woman dressed up like his wife, I saw. So that was interesting as I was driving over to the place, because they made us park down below and then took us all up um by bus. I was the one of the first um Indians on a bus. Actually, there I met another couple Oglalas there. One of them who's the partner of the guy who works for your college, OLC, I guess, the OLC, and so I was visiting with them. But then the rest of them were all like Custer reenactors and stuff. And honest to God, Maggie, the two guys behind me started to discuss how it could have been won, and I was like, dude, time and place, man, time and place. Like, what are you doing? Like, no, it couldn't have been one. There was nothing you could have done. We were coming, and it
You're
happened.
reenacting for dead people?
Yeah,
Shit,
yeah. Like, I mean, like
they're
that's
dying.
it's like cosplaying for adult, like for grandpas. Like what the heck? Like, all. I mean, that's such a weird thing for me. Um, and now that I know that like 52% of Washichu women, and at least more than that of the men voted for Trump, I don't even bother engaging with them.
Well, Trump was trying to change the narrative there, right? Like he's taken down all the Lakota things and Northern Cheyenne things and Arapaho things, and so he's taking down all of those things and trying to turn it back into poor white guys got massacred.
Yeah, but I mean that the Park Service was not that great anyway. As the if you go to Washiuni, even before Trump, it still said this is a place held sacred by Plains Indians. Not the Lakota that live right next to us that are probably giving you the tour, but just Plains Indians. The Park Service doesn't you do a good job of stating with the truth anyway. And now with Trump coming in changing his narrative, that's disturbing. But I think there's enough of us around that will remind him of the truth still. You can't change, you can't change a history for a people who do oral history, right? Like you can't change that history because we have it, we own it. And that was pretty powerful. And I have to say I got pretty overwhelmed when I watched the horses. It was beautiful. And there was uh there was a lot of a lot of people were there. It was just it was a really good thing. And but again, like I said, it was just so much money. Had I been in charge of any IRA government, there's no way I would have spent our resources on that. It was definitely a Park Service event. And I feel like in so many ways, a lot of us, because our identity was stolen from us, like we feel like we have to assert it at every opportunity. And so I feel like, folks are just like, we need to be there to do whatever. Well, no, we don't. We don't need to be proven nothing anymore at this point. And when we live in, basic, I think prison cells still, because they imprison us um, with the paradigm that we're living. We're imprisoned in the paradigm of capitalism. We're imprisoned in the paradigm of poverty. And so like we're very imprisoned a lot of times. And so I feel like people we can't live our culture unless we're taking care of the vulnerable. And we're not doing that. And so it's hard for me to get excited about doing things like that. Because if we were, here and we were taking care of each other and we were strong and we were unified, um, and we could speak our language. That's another thing. I sat next to um, I got into the front row because I had to stream it for the radio station. So I got right up to the front row, and there was a kid sitting next to me, and he happened to be a Crow. And the crow, and as someone that later on was like, did you bring a helper with you? I was like, no, that I didn't even know that guy. I just was visiting with him. And you couldn't tell he was a crow, but you couldn't tell. He was a little crow college student in economics. So we visited a bit about economics. And of course I said, our economics are a lot different than yours because you guys have all the coal. And he said, yeah, 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 yeah. But one of the things that they have at Crow is just like so much of their language. Like they start the kids out from the very beginning. And he was sitting next to me, about 23 years old, fluent in Crow. So I think that there's a lot of ways that we could be doing better on that, making our schools, teach our language more. I think they do. A lot of these guys around here who grew up with it know a lot more Lakota than I, but I think that would be one thing that we could take from the Crow.
I think that there are quite a few people, but I don't know necessarily, like the schools do play a part in it, but being a person that has worked hard to try to uh sustain or maintain our language, putting that in the schools, there's so much competition and so much revolting. And it's even from our own tribal members, it's our own historical trauma issues. Like whatever it is, like I always think of this one teacher, she's Lakota and everything, and she did incorporate Lakota stuff, but then because I am alcohol and drug free, she resented me for that. And so even though she did all the things, and then one day she just made a big point to, I don't know, to announce that she likes to drink wine. And then she kind of got labeled like a wino, like,
Yeah.
okay. It's like, why? Like that, you didn't even need to say nothing. You just keep doing what you're doing because you're doing an amazing job. You didn't need to out yourself like that. I mean, I wasn't, I live a drug and alcohol free life because that's how I want to live. But it's really interesting. And then I think there's got to be more community engagement. And so, how do you create community engagement? And I used to be in on all of this stuff about nonprofits and how they can um, do this work, but then it just like the people that you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm going to support that. Well, then it became about a select group of students, select group of people, it wasn't anything for everyone. And so I get a little frustrated with the nonprofit movement in regards to language revitalization because they do it that way. And then they take all the money, they take all this money that and then just self-serve. But I also think that it can just start in your family. And so the things that you do, use language where you can. Like if there's people still that are fluent speakers in your family, you should hang out with them, try to engage with them. If you have friends or whatever, you should try to engage. That's what I do. Try to engage and um, try to develop it because waiting for school to do it is going to take 500 years. Take
Yeah,
longer than
that's
it
yeah.
takes to make us all English speakers
Yeah,
because then we have to get through all the traumas.
That's interesting because my dad was the youngest of 10 kids, and all of his older brothers grew up speaking. Older brothers and sisters grew up speaking Lakota. And when he was born in 1942, the family decided that this kid is not going to speak Lakota. It's 1942, and so my dad was the only one that grew up without being able to speak the language. He did a bit, he knew it. He took a bunch, just from osmosis from his older brothers and sisters and that kind of stuff. But, I think that, in addition to the language, it's more important for us to to share the culture. And so like I grew up with a dad who doesn't, didn't speak the language, but, I was always, told about our culture and how we were to relate to each other and how we were to relate to the earth. And so like, as long as I think we're still installing those the cultural values, the language is going to come. And that's actually one of the things that I sort of committed to after going there. It's like I had to learn our language, and it's so hard for me. I do know a few words, but I'll never speak it in public because I'm a speaker, right? So I want to I don't want to stumble over stuff. Maybe eventually I will. I don't want to say never, but I think that we have these sort of insecurities that are built into us because of the trauma of boarding schools. And I just want to say too that like I think that trauma is what really pervades in and keeps the poverty continuing because there's that like you said before, like the good Indians and the bad Indians. Like you like we're the good ones because we go to school and we do this work and we do all that stuff. Well, is that really the good Indians because you're paying attention more to doing what the government wants you to do? Is that right? No, that's not necessarily correct. So, I think a lot of people um really have to go through that trauma of what happened to them and and what they did. And that's we talked about this last week. That's the trauma of existing in this capitalistic society and living under white supremacy. It's a trauma, and if you don't deal with that stuff, you are unable, I think, to see each other as relatives and to want to share and to want to identify as a people. And I think that's one of the things that we really as our leaders need to be doing. But it's so hard with literally everything coming at us from all different angles all the time. And I guess we should move to politics, I guess, now and say, I was praying, I'm sure you were as well, that the trips to Camp David was going to mean that he was very sick. But no, we saw him. And Mitch McConnell as well. We saw him too. He was missing for about 7 or 8 days. He turned up yesterday as well, being pushed in a wheelchair, so he's not dead. I do think, though, that they are afraid, very afraid of the midterms, and I'm so glad. And we have to talk too about how Mamdani won, right? His not him, but his slate of DSA people, and and then the whole week of like the pundits all over just crying around, the progressive ones too, crying around about this DSA win. Well, if the Democrats, and then the Democrats are all like, "Oh no, we can't do electability." I'm like, why are we listening to you about electability? You literally lost to Trump twice. So why are we listening to the DNC about anything? And I think the DNC is a tool of AIPAC, right? And they're scared to death. And I think that's great. I think the APEC folks need to be scared. The general public is on to them, and it's going to get worse. And Trump's going to die, and then they're going to fall apart, and then things are going to be better. But it's not just him. We can't just pray for his demise, because he is just the pimple on the butt of the MAGA problem, right? So he's just standing out. But the whole problem is that those guys think that they, won the Civil War. Like, there's all kinds of things. I mean, there's really, we talk about Israel being an ethno state. America is an ethno state as well, and I love that. And I haven't seen the discourse yet that makes that leap. That says, oh, if we're going to be progressive, then we should actually be looking at the genocide of our people, of Indigenous people, and realize that America is as well an ethno state, and that's why Black people are being shot all the time by the police, and it doesn't ever change because it's an ethno state. Um, the police do shoot white people too, but poor white people, right? Like, so it's not like they're taking down socialites or anything. But I think that we're definitely in the midst of dealing with what we didn't really deal with in the Civil War. The Civil War, they just stopped fighting and then paid all the slave owners, right? Like all the slave owners got paid, and then the ex-slaves got nothing because the poor whites were jealous of them, right? And then they created the prison system and reenacted slavery. So, we're still in a slave society. It's run by capitalism, and it's an ethno state. And I think that this last week in New York was a hope. Did you hear about that?
No.
Oh, well, they won in the primaries, all the DSA candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought you was talking about a different. Yeah,
Oh,
no. I saw and heard um Mike Johnson crying ground. I'm
wasn't
like,
that hilarious?
oh my goodness, you snowflakes.
Oh my God, he was such a, and Mike Johnson is totally on Grinder. So like they're just full of shit, those guys. And I don't have nothing against gay folks, obviously, but I do have a lot against gay folks who punish other gay folks. Like, come on, dude. And I don't know if you saw, there was a tiny little bit of a press conference that John Thune was at with
Larry
Trump.
Pressler.
Yeah, well, with Trump was saying something about Iran, and Thune kind of rolled his eyes or did something kind of whatever next to Trump. So I hope Trump tries to take to John and then makes his life miserable.
Well, I watched, and I didn't mean Larry Pressler, just because
Mm.
that's the only Pressler name I know. But there's this Pressler guy, so I came across this yesterday. Supposedly, this Pressler guy, um, he goes to the South Dakota Republican Party convention, and they don't let him in. And so then he's there trying to challenge Thune about the Saves Act, and this Pressler guy says he's like 100% Trump when and Thune is a fake, and all of like Thune is not MAGA and he's a rhino. And anyway, so this Pressler guy is all out, trying to whatever. And so this thing came across my feed and I watched it, and then I had to comment because it's just like you're saying something that isn't factual. And so, like, all right, MAGA hat people, why are you not fact checking him? Because he's saying 80% of Americans support the Saves Act. And that's not true. Maybe 80% of Republicans support it, but 80% of Americans do not. And the poll that was done, the most recent poll was done in March, and it said 63% say supported it. And then there's a CNN article, but then I can't read it because if you click on the article, CNN wants you to agree with the terms of service and private. Also, I'm just like, no, that ain't happening. So I guess I'm not going to be reading that article. So then I just kept looking for other information. And so Trump comes out and says it's like 73% of Americans support this, but Trump don't have no data behind him either. And so all of these guys are just making these claims about
Voter
the
fraud.
Safe Act. Yeah. And
Yep.
then
Yeah. And
so I'm
when
going back and forth because I'm a master troller. I learned how to be a master troller from no DAPL era.
mm,
So I learned how to do that, and I can go into their spaces and I can carry conversations, and I can even get a little childish too. So somebody said on my thing about or my response, because I said 80% do not support that. Just saying that you're saying 80% support it. That's not true. But anyways,
yeah.
so this
Well,
guy comments and he says, Maggie's garden smells like rotten tuna. So then I commented your middle name,
eh, that's so funny.
your
Like,
forehead.
did you see what Massey said about the Save Act? He said
Yep.
he said we control the House, we control the Senate, and we control the presidency. If there's voter fraud, how did we win? How are we winning? And I think that's the truth. Like the Save Act is really just a way for Trump to steal the election. And the fact that he held up that housing thing that he did last week. He held up the housing bill that he did that wasn't, that great anyway. So it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's obviously not that great anyway because they agreed on it in a bipartisan way. In order to get any of these Republicans to do anything, it's got to be for the corporations, right? But there was a few things in there that changed housing, but he is not going to sign that bill. Well, if he doesn't veto it, it becomes law in 10 days. So it will probably become law because I can't imagine him vetoing it. But he said he said he wasn't going to sign it because Thune's not working on the Save Act. So I really think that it's going to be some kind of showdown. And I actually love it because, John Thune, you lay down with dogs, you're going to come up with fleas, buddy. And they're orange fleas and they bite you in the ass. I'm so sorry, sir. It's going to be very interesting and fun to watch. And I can't wait because guess what? John Thune started out as a staffer for Pressler, Larry Pressler, and he knew what he needed to do in order to get elected. And the whole of DC is full of these people who just want to play the game. Like they just want to play the game. They don't care about they just want to win. It's this, and someone said it's DC is like Hollywood for ugly people. Like as soon as they I mean that's not really nice to say, um like, all the good people in your all the beautiful people in your high school class go to Hollywood, and all the ugly people who want to be in charge go to DC. And it really is like that. A lot of these people go there so that they can eventually get their get their seats, right? And that's, I think, what the biggest rub coming from these establishment Democrats is that those seats that these DSA people are winning are promised to someone. That's, so and so's son who's supposed to be in that position, and so and so's daughter. Or son? Did you see that Jack? What's his name? He lost to one of them. Jack Kennedy's grandson.
Squash.
Yeah, yeah, but he's a Zionist, right? So and that's why he lost. And you can't be a Zionist in New York
Isn't that
City.
crazy? Isn't that crazy that, Israel assassinated your grandfather
Yep.
and so you're going to be Israel? Mm.
Yeah. Well, his dad is Jewish, his dad is Jewish, and so from Israel, I think too, if I remember right. Anyway, it's
Really? I
we
didn't know he was from Israel. I thought he was just the
no, I
Jewish.
thought, well, I thought, you never can tell because I think people go there for a couple of years, but I thought
He's
Carolina,
probably a dual citizen guy. And
yeah,
that
that's right.
Schlossberg probably is too.
That's right. That's why I thought that there was, so I read something where the dad was a dual citizen. So, I mean, you buy into that, you buy into it. And that's the way it is. I mean, that the MAGA is
They say
essentially is,
Camelot,
yeah.
Camelot failed or Camelot is a hoax or something like that. I can't remember. There's some news articles about him losing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could have told you he had the general public understands what's happening in Israel now, and they understand that what they've done to to the people of Gaza, because they see what's happening, and the people of Lebanon right now too. I mean, um you can't people are seeing it with their own eyes, and it's coming from uh Israeli citizens too. Like that's how they're getting all these videos and stuff from the soldiers who are recording themselves targeting children. That's how those videos get out, is because those soldiers, those IDF soldiers, are posting it. And I just want to say again, the Department of Homeland Security Twitter account was started in Israel, in Tel Aviv. Like the way that the control mechanisms, the ICE, the Border Patrol, all this other stuff is controlled by Israel in this country. I mean, we're occupied, and people need to start recognizing that, because if they're controlling the Twitter for the Department of Homeland Security in Tel Aviv, then who the heck are we? Like this is crazy. Like and MAGA people, they don't know that. They don't know that, they don't know these things because Fox News is lying to them. And so, Fox News is a tool of the genocide of Gaza as well. And CNN too, and all of the major news people. There was a woman that they had on that CNN show yesterday, basically, saying just the most horrendous stuff. And they were just like, they were challenging her, but just allowing her to say that. And it's just racism. It's like, come on, like MAGA's got, I mean, it's literally the thing that unifies MAGA. They did a research in 2019. There was a paper that was done. The one thing that they agree on, the one issue, was racism. So, how can we not say that we live in an ethno state when we've got, an ethno state, or a political movement that's running the country right now?
And then it just brings us all the way back around to the little bighorn.
That's right.
So when you think about, like, you're saying that you're on that bus and somebody's trying to recreate the narrative, like they could have won, they could have whatever, well, that's not the reality. That's not what happened. They did not win. And the flag that was confiscated sits in Standing Rock. And we are still here today, and the Black Hills still belong to us. And we still have treaty lands, and we still have all of these things that you people are occupying. And it just goes on like that. And people think that, because it's so like Trump supports it. Trump supports racism. Trump supports separation, division, all of that stuff. So people feel more free to be able to express themselves in that way. And so then they don't like the answer. Whenever they open their mouths, then they don't like the answer that comes, and then they're the victims. Then everybody's picking on me. Or I saw this one video where this MAGA mother, she is crying on TikTok about, we need to teach our children that it's not okay to hit back. And it's like, what? But then you just taught your kid to go over there and say a bunch of racist things and be a bully and push a kid back. Or push a kid. So that kid is just in self-defense. But now you're going to cry because it didn't turn out in the favor of the bully. And so that's kind of like this whole thing, it's like, geez, Louise, let's get it together, because US Cavalry got their butts wiped, they got done in. And if we could tell the story, it was the Northern Cheyenne woman that did it. So let's tell the story about the Arapaho lady. She what is her name? Pretty Nose. She's the most well-known lady in regards, or we are that was fighting within at the Battle of Little Bighorn. And so
And
talk about her, like, but no, women are not even like it. And I love my ancestors. I love all about Crazy Horse. I love all about Touch the Cloud, Rain in the Face, Brings the Rain, White Bull, Charger. I love all of them, and I love the stories, and I love all of that. But then it's like the story of the Little Bighorn doesn't fully get told, because it keeps the story out. It continually denies the women
yeah,
and our role in our societies as defenders as well. So not
yeah,
only in the battle, we're also helping people who are harmed. We are doing moving camp. We are all of these different things. So we're strategists as well. We're doing all of these things, and we're working together within our bands. And then you think about language barrier. So Arapaho speak a different language, Northern Cheyenne speak a different language, Lakota people and Dakota people speak a different language. But these are three different groups of people who became allies, stood together, and were able to communicate without knowing the same language. And so that doesn't really get told either, the power of sign language.
that's right.
That
That's right. And two, I think that women at that time, we controlled the camps. Like we were in charge of the safety of the camps. We controlled all the stuff. And so I think that, now it's switched around, right? Because we have all our IRA men who are in charge of taking care of the reservation and all that stuff. And I think that's where we mess up, right? Because men aren't for taking care of the uh of the people. They're for hunting and warring. And I think that, back in the day, they recognized that, and they had the separate roles, and they were comfortable with those separate roles. And now it's like men are like, oh well, white men take care of all their stuff, so we got to do what white men do. And so that's what we do. I mean, we run everything like authoritarian, white people. If you don't do what I say, you're not going to get no money. You're going to do this, and you're going to jump when I say jump.
To top all of that off, Chaz, this is like I didn't go up there, but my Mihasani went up there, and he, calling me and telling me back, like, the things that were going on, and like the Crow Nation trying to act up, telling people to get out, go home, all of this stuff. So I'm like, I said, how come you guys just didn't tell them settle down? But then,
What?
so the Crow people are acting up, and then um they actually come into camp. I think it's the first night or the second night, and they create a ruckus. So the law enforcement had to be called. And then the organization. So my tribe, I guess, is maybe had some failure in leadership. And I hear your tribe had some failure in leadership.
Yeah.
I hear that Rosebud and Standing Rock kind of took the lead and charge. And so who's running those?
Is it women?
Yep. So you have Kathy Woodenknife is the president of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, but then so then they come well prepared. They have everything that's needed. They're cooking for people. They're it's just a well organized. That's just what was said to me. While your president and my president were off, with the white tourists trying to do the big campaign speeches and whatever, it's kind of crazy. It's just like, oh my goodness, like, and then I'm kind of disappointed, like the Oglala Sioux tribe, they set up a bunch of teepees and then they didn't let anybody sleep in them, so there's
What?
some, yeah, so there's some really shot things, like when people um this was my concern. This was a bucket list thing for my mom. So my
Mm.
mom, she said her bucket list, one of them was to go to the Battle of Little Bighorn, and she wanted to go to Jackson Hole, or is it Jackson Keyhole?
Mm.
Jackson Hole, I think it is. And then she wanted to go to Yellowstone. And
Oh,
so that's what
beautiful.
I was gonna do this year as kind of um her bucket list. I was gonna, even though she's not here anymore, I was gonna go and do those things for her. And then this is the 150th year, and so then I'm like, well, I can't go there because one, I'm still grieving, I'm still grieving, and then I get real bad anxiety when there's a lot of people around. And it just bothers me, like, especially like if people are not tending to their children and things like that, man, my anxiety will go way up, because then it's like people are going to get hurt, or whatever.
Oh
So
yeah,
there's
you would
that.
have been nuts there.
Yeah. And then the other thing was, um I thought, that's a cemetery. That's a cemetery. And so I don't know, like, is that like disrespecting our own ancestors by going over there and doing all of this stuff? And so that was an issue for me. I thought I wouldn't go. I don't know, like, I didn't know if that was. And then the other thing was, why are you doing this? Because it's a commemoration about survival, that we survived and we're still here? Or is this something that's going to, like, you're doing it for political gain? And so then that was an issue for me. And I strongly felt like a lot of this was political gain. And then the last thing that was an issue is the amount of money that went into doing that. And then not really, so like that whole part of making sure. So I'm really glad and thankful for the Rosebud Sioux tribe, making sure that they came prepared. They were going to take care of all of the people that they brought, all of that, make sure they're fed. They brought porta potties. They did all of these things to make sure that they're. Oh, trash cans too. I think they brought their own trash bins, all of this stuff to make sure that they're taken care of. And so those are the things that, like, really, really bothered me. Um, I think I saw somewhere where it said like is close to about a would at the end when the dust settles with the 150th commemoration and all the people that were involved and all the tribes that donated, it would be close to $1 million.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm
And
sure.
so looking at that and then thinking, and then at the other side, it's commemorable, it's great. I love it. I love the story. I love all of those. But then I had those, just those things within myself. And maybe if I wasn't grieving, maybe if it was next year, I would be there. But I didn't want to go. So I'm gonna still do it, but it'll be later in July that I will go up there and then I'll go to Jackson Hole and then I'll go over to Yellowstone.
Well, and
With my
one of the things I wanted to say too is that on the way over there, I mean, that was all a part of our treaty land. Like as you drive over there, it's a most I here in Eagle Butte, I took 212, all the 212 goes all the way to the battlefield. It goes right by the battlefield. So as you drive out there, you could drive through Northern Cheyenne and then you drive through Crow, and it's just incredibly beautiful, and it's all part of the Custer National Forest. That's also here in northern, north central, or northwestern South Dakota, the Cave Hills, which is a cool place too. I think people should go, and I do think I'd have been I'd be a lot happier if uh, uh, or more proud if like we actually didn't live like Washichus, and we didn't have so many street people, and we didn't have all these things that we have. Like I just don't understand. um it's not in, if we're, I do think that our tribe did something here for the people on the res here. They had a couple of big events, and ended up, feeding hot dogs and hamburgers and all that stuff for the folks, for the lot of people who couldn't go, right? So I thought that was really nice. But when we do these things, when we go far off places, and we do these things, like it's all kind of about showmanship. I think about like at Standing Rock, where like I was up there for, most of the time living in my tent and making all that kind of stuff. Our tribe, Cheyenne River, spent almost $3 million at Standing Rock. Can you believe that? Like, for what? Just so that they could create their own camp up there with people who would tell our former chairman, Harold Fraser, that he's a good water protector. Well, everyone knew he wasn't, because he took money from Trans Canada, he took money from the Redskins. The guy's like unethical as shit. But spent $3 million at Standing Rock, of our tribe's money. And that had to go through the council, so the council's all responsible for that too. So it's not just him. But it was just a show. He spent $3 million to show that he had people at the camp. Like, what did he prove? And what's the point of that all now? And even afterward, he invited people back to live here at our powwow grounds. And so afterward, there was like all this kind of tension over the water protectors that were getting free stuff from the chairman, and all of that stuff is crazy. Like, if you can't support yourself, do not be going to a protest. If you can't, if you don't, if you need the chairman to be giving you gas money, then you're not a protector. You're just, you need help. You need to make, I think that we think that we should be, and at everything, like all of us, if so and so's there, we need to be there. But do we need to be there? Do you need to be there to be a burden on everyone else? So everyone else can take care of you? Because there's always someone taking care of all these people. It's nice to hear that Rosebud took care, brought their own porta potties and all that stuff. But there's always some woman making sure everyone's getting fed. And, then there's some man, riding in buckskins, taking all the credit, right? I mean, that's just the way it is now, but it wasn't that way. And I wish that more of our our warriors, quote unquote warriors, would read and understand what it was like for Crazy Horse and those guys. You know, Crazy Horse was a very humble guy. Like they wrote about him that he didn't even wear eagle feathers into battle. He wore hawk feathers, and you know, and he didn't ever put himself before the people. And I think that's yeah, before it was never before. He was always with, and I think that we need to move back to that. And because nowadays I think a lot of people think like Washijus, and they think about, pushing themselves out and being recognized by everyone else, and being the elite of the res, and I think that that's where we go wrong. Because none of the wisdom comes from folks who are educated at Harvard and Yale, right? Those people are the people who have lost their empathy. I've attacked those guys here on this thing already, like the Heather Don Thompson, who was like saving the her ancestors saved the buffalo, but she worked during the whole Biden administration and didn't make one statement about the genocide of the Gazan people. So that empathy was bred out of her. Because she's like, she lived off the res. She doesn't, she didn't grow up here, all that stuff. But our empathy is what defines us as Indigenous people. Our relation to each other. And a lot of people, if you're okay with sacrificing people the way Joe Biden did, and the way other people do. People sacrifice people because they don't see them as relatives. It's very dehumanizing. If you're walking on the street and you're an addict, people don't identify as you. I do. I always identify as those folks and know that, but for the grace of God, there could go I. And I think that too many people on our reservations think like Washichus now, and we see each other as others, right? We don't see each other as unity. My chairman gave a pretty good speech about unity, and how that was a unified effort. The three tribes, the three people, the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and us, and we all came together and we did that. And we can do that. We want to come together. We can do that here in Eagle Butte and come together and feel united. But it seems like we only are unified off the res. On the res, it's like, only my family gets to do this, and only so and so gets to do this, and we don't even listen to you. And it follows with funds, like so and so gets funded to do this, and so gets funded to do this. And that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, the priorities aren't about elevating the people, elevating our consciousness, elevating our situation. It's usually just about elevating one or two people, and so and so's family. And so I get really I've kind of disassociated from that. I've been an organizer for so long that, like, I know I can't make any difference here, so I don't organize. Like I get to the point where I try to do everything I can for so long, and then I say, oh, okay, well, you don't even want me here, so why am I here? And I think that's right. Like there's no people wanting to challenge folks. And like, I'm a big challenger. I'll challenge you if I have another, I'll do it right in front of everyone, because I'm not afraid of the truth, because the truth is what connects us. And the lies are the trauma. The trauma tells us the lies. The lies are what makes us comfortable with the truth, right? So I think that we have to get away from the post reservation mentality about being Indigenous, and start living in our values, and being kind to each other, and stop, like, performing for the white eye, for the white gaze, right? Like, we're all just performing for white people. And you remember when they had that good Indian and bad Indian stuff out there at in Rapid City. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
do believe I think that is like so endemic of the situation here, even on the rest. I mean, there are good Indians and there are bad Indians, and we decide who are those, whatever. But the truth of the matter is that we are traumatized and we see each other as others, and so we don't have any unity, um and no one is trying to build it, right? They're just trying to build power. People try to build power all the time and they don't try to build unity, because you can't have power without community. And so they just want power over. They don't want the people to have power. They just want to have the power, because they know what's right. And that's why I don't trust people who know what's right. That's the thing, is that you can't trust anyone who knows the way, because the way is because it's very complicated. And we were comfortable with the great mystery back in the day, and we should be now too. There's a lot of things we don't know, and there's a lot of things we will never know, but we do know how to treat each other and how to treat the earth, and how to we still hold on to that. We still know those things. But do we do it? No, we're poor now, so we think like poor people a lot of times.
Yeah. And I think that that whole being told that you're poor does something to you mentally,
Mm-hmm.
and it causes that deficit thinking that you're less than. And so I don't know, I always try to really support families and encourage families to encourage each other, and then to reset, because we can't change a nation um unless we change ourselves.
That's right.
And so those kind of things are really important. And then you can give people tools to do it as well. And so I work on those kind of things too, to provide tools, thinking, using our own minds to make change and make headway. I'll tell you, when I often like want to know like roots, and so the value system of where things come from. And so in my own family, like I go to the roots of my family, and like where does this exist, and then how did it perform or whatever outward, like how do we demonstrate it. And so then I could look to, like, my mother, she was a good example, because everybody came to her to help, like, we need help, or this is happening. And so my mother became a spokesperson for people within our family. Um, Her mother, my grandma Marge, was the same. My grandma Marge took care of everybody. She worked, and so then um for her relatives that were not able to find a job or whatever, then she helped them and she took care of them. Back whenever they used to wrap H&M store, they would wrap your meat up in that butcher paper.
Mm-hmm.
She would buy meat, and then she would take some to her relatives, and things like that, and trying to help. And then her mother, my great grandmother, the same. It's like all of these roles that people had. So in my family, like, I can look to the women, and they demonstrate it. My dad's mom, it was the same. She took care of people and took care of kids, so she was a teacher. And so there's a lot of people that will talk about, like, they didn't have something. And so she would go and find it, whether, like back then, second hand was, a find. Back then, like, you couldn't afford brand new things, but she would go and find shoes or things for her students. And they would remember her. They, tell me those things now as an adult, that, and then give me the respect too, that because my grandmother did that for them. And then
Mm-hmm.
her grandmother was the same. I mean, her mother. So my grandma Ida was the same, always taking care of, always helping,
Did I lose you?
Representative and what, so I know in my family or in my roots that it's there. And so I just think about that and demonstrating it. So I know it's in my roots. So then in my roots, then I need to foster and water those roots so that I can demonstrate that as well. And so I'm sometimes I miss the mark with it, but I do the best that I can to do that. And so I can't change the world, but I can take care of my family. And I
That's
think
right.
that should be something that we all kind of work to do is take care of our families and help each other out and be good relatives because then if we plan to make it another 150 years, like if in 150 years you're gonna have the 250th commemoration, there needs to be Lakota, Dakota, Northern Cheyenne, Arapaho, there we need to have them available.
Well,
Still
I
exist.
don't know if there's going to be an America in another 100 years. Like, is America going to last? I don't know. I feel like that might be the first thing, but I agree with you, Maggie. I think I watched my dad helping people his whole life. He was a very generous, inclusive man. He would always show up when people asked and helped him. And it breaks my heart really because like I told you before, my family has not they don't live like my dad. And so like you say, help your family. Well, I try to help my family, but they don't listen and they want to, trauma is a thing where you don't if you don't if you don't think that so and so is a good spokesman, you'll just like not even be able to hear them. And so like I think that my dad though is was a guy who would just would donate his time. He would give you money, whatever he had. And it was nice to it's nice being home because I was out in Rapid for a long time. So now and then I'll hear a story. And the other day, Dana Dupreez, who's our cultural teacher here, he came in and he said, I wanted to tell you a story about your dad. And I was like, okay. And he's like, we were related. And he told me about how we were related. And I was like, oh wow. And he said, your dad and your Uncle Pinky came to our cousin's funeral in such and such year. And he stayed and he watched that fire for 4 days and he stayed there for 4 days. And I think about what like none of my sisters would give themselves to something out like that for 4 days, but I would, but I that would be something that I would do. And so I was able um to get the lessons and and heal from the trauma that was our growing up. He wasn't a really abusive guy, but he was violent when he got angry and all that kind of stuff. So that was pretty traumatic. And I was able to heal to get to the point where I could still love him despite that trauma. And I think that, sometimes like people will go far away from those values because of that trauma. And so I think people need to really separate themselves from and see, I think, walk in our parents' footsteps, because that was a much different world. And from 1942 to 2005, that's when he lived. From 1942, that was a much different, the 50s, the 60s, all of that stuff was a much different time. And he was able to when I was born to hold on to those values that were instilled into me. And my sisters, they didn't get those same values. I'm not saying that they're not, nice, good people, but like their trauma doesn't, I think, allow them to free themselves up from the burdens of their everyday capitalistic existence, right? Some people Like all they just worry about is paying the light bill. And that's a thing, people do that. But it's also a trauma. And when people just pay attention to just stay in their own lane, that's when we get things like freaking Donald Trump, right? Oh, I can't, well, that's why we still have racism. That's why racism still exists, because people, I just got to stay in my own lane and do good and pay my bills and just live my life and do all this stuff. And then everyone on this line is everything's like going bad, and everyone who's speaking up gets attacked. If you say something, someone on council gets mad at you, tries to take your unit, tries to take your job, tries to take all kinds of stuff. So, even having an opinion in Indian country is a dangerous thing. So I recognize that, but I also want to challenge everyone and say that it's much easier to live with a Lakota conscience. And a Lakota conscience is one that where you're a good relative to everyone, and you don't go around hurting people or stealing or lying or doing all that kind of stuff. It's a lot easier to live that way than knowing that you had to take so and so's last $100 because they owed you money and they don't have money for diapers now. It's like the capitalism is an evil, and in our way, reciprocity, right? Your grandma helped those kids, and then eventually you got help or something helped. It comes back round, right? You don't just do things and it goes no, it comes back around. And so that good energy that my dad built up, I get that, and so now I'm gonna try to pass it on to my nieces and nephews and have them get those good lessons. And again, but like I try to, though they don't listen to me in my family, which is whatever. They don't listen to me in my tribe either, but whatever. I think that I'm going to continue to talk though. So but I think that it's important for us to go through these things and to understand that this is not our ways. These are not our ways. This is not our ways. And if we want to live in indigeneity, it's possible. And folks, we just pray a lot. That's all. And I think that's what's the difference between us and them is that they pray for power and their churches, and they the power stuff. That I've been reading a lot about Hildegard the Big. I don't know if you know her. She's a she's a she was a nun back in the Dark Ages or something like that. And her philosophy was indigenous, right? It was all about, being a relative to the plants and all this stuff. And she built a convent and all this stuff, and built these havens for women, where women could exist in these very violent times, right? And I think that the most important thing that we do is to be a good relative, and it's very complicated, but you have to understand these systems in order to not buy into them. And you have to see the systems of colonization. You have to see the systems of white supremacy, of ethno states, hierarchy, all that stuff. A lot of people just can't even see things, Maggie. They're just that's the problem, is that people aren't it's not in our culture nowadays to seek, and that used to be one of the things that we would do, is to seek a prayer, seek a vision, seek a that's what we would do, but we don't anymore. We don't challenge ourselves spiritually and emotionally, and so we end up like what she choose, narcissist, infantile narcissist, like the one we got in the presidency. That guy's just like, you know, totally like all of the bad actors from history, right? Of the men who did bad things. He's just like all of them. And we just continue to listen and to do what these bad men want us to do. And yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's a lot of work to be done, and I think we can only personally be responsible for ourselves and our families, and do the best we can to model good behavior. Um, I think capitalism is dying. That might be just because I want it to be that way.
No,
Um,
I think so. I agree.
and I think that in this world, um, the felt like I was watching this thing in about communism, and people are like, Mike Johnson getting mad about the Democratic Socialists,
Hmm.
and so he's getting mad about them, and then the liberals or whatever within the Democratic Party are getting mad at them as well, and getting mad because they're losing the narrative. And and then what you're finding is with the Democratic Socialists, they're not just it isn't just like the left of, because Democratic Socialism is still capitalism. It's not communism, it's still
That's right.
capitalism. And so it's like the centrist movement would have been. But anyway, so you're getting more people that are kind of coming along. So they're picking up a lot of the former Republican people too, and independents. And so the Democratic Socialism isn't anything like communism. And I wouldn't necessarily say we were communistic people, but in our time, we didn't have crime like at this scale. We didn't have to do that. And then we also lived in community, and we took care of each other. So there was no need to have to be the haves and the have nots. And
That's
so
right.
everybody was haves and everybody was have nots.
That's right. That's right.
And so if one suffered, everybody suffered. And so I think the whole part of lifting upward is kind of a hard message to carry, because there's so many people, even our own people, that are eyes and they're gatekeepers. And so they don't want anybody there. They want to hold all of that. So in the conversation, even where you were with language at the beginning of this hour, was there's gatekeepers there as well. There's gatekeepers to culture. There's gatekeepers to all of this lako witroha. There's
Hmm.
gatekeepers. And so if you're not a gatekeeper, you would be one that just, kind of brings and encourages and tries to get people to come in and help them. And so that's the frustrating thing I think about all of it for me personally, is where people have found where you can make profit. You can create nonprofits to create a profit. And
Yeah.
then they leave, like I don't understand how you could be worth like $2 million, and you're just building off of a nonprofit and building off of these different things. And I've seen um medicine people do that, and I shouldn't have judgment or anything about it, but it's just like I see that. And so even in it, like, Crazy Horse was a very humble man. That's what we're taught. Like he wasn't a look at me, and that's what we're taught. He didn't say look at me. He didn't even go to those places where you got to be a braggart. He never went, because he never bragged. And he would sit amongst the people, or he would sit outside away from them, because he wasn't he lived a Lakota way of life that he thought was best. And And maybe even back then they weren't saying this is Lakota way of life, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I'm just living in the 1800s.
yeah.
I don't know, but it's kind of like you think about that, and I think about that, and I get worried that there's people, we're not humble anymore. We're not humble in the sense that we see each other struggling. We know we've lost our empathy, and then we're so angry. We're angry that we want to blame and we want to tear everybody's houses down.
Yep.
And so that's kind of a um I don't know, I watch it and I hear it and I would just be like, geez, that's too bad. Like, do I need to join in on that? No. And so I don't, and then it is what it is. But here we are,
Well,
Chaz, at the end of our time.
thank you.
It's
Thank you
always
so much.
a great conversation. I always really enjoy listening to you, and you have such great insight on things.
Same. This is a lot of fun. I think that it helps me sort of go through the whole week and remember everything that happened, and it's these are very interesting times. Very.
They are. And
Mhm.
and then it doesn't stop. So boom, 150th commemoration done. Boom, New York primary elections done. Now we're still moving forward. That's life. Got to keep moving. And so next week we'll see what the Lego videos come out with and see if Iran is bombing, United States bombed them, Iran is bombing back. So we'll see what happens. And then we're down to, it would be what, 3 weeks? 3 weeks left of our oil. So we'll
Well,
see where this goes.
I thought he said that 3 weeks ago, so we're pretty close to.
4 week, or I mean, last week I think it was, or maybe it was two weeks ago that he said that. I thought it was last week. He said we got
Yeah.
4 weeks. So
Which he was
I
not supposed to
don't know.
say. He was not supposed to say that. That guy's got like verbal diarrhea. He can't keep anything in. He's crazy.
I
I
know.
w- I can't imagine working for him because I would be like, "Are you kidding me, buddy? What did you just say? Like you just ruined it all."
We lost it
Yeah,
again.
again, again. Well, we'll see you next